former PM Paul Keating gave an interview today with the Fin Review, but he made these really interesting remarks. He said that income tax rates in Australia are still too high. He said there's an issue that all societies should have of how much a person's conscientious efforts and wealth should be delivered to the state. He said once you start getting the top rate over, in his opinion, 39%, it becomes confiscatory. And when it becomes confiscatory, you just lose all that impetus to make a dollar and do clever things. In other words, anti-aspirational. Well, joining me to discuss, Herald Sun business commentator Terry McCrann, the legend. Terry, what do you think about this? I think these are very sensible comments from Paul Keating. And, you know, like other countries around the world, we should be having the tax thresholds indexed to coincide with inflation. What do you think?
Absolutely, Sherry, and I think the big message out of that statement from Paul, that unlike some other 80-year-olds we might have been talking about,
yes,
Paul Keating's still got his marbles. Clearly, too high tax rates are punitive, and they're not only punitive for the taxpayer, but it means less tax revenues actually flow to the government. One of the great lessons we should have learnt in the second half of the 20th century is that lowering the tax rate actually increases the tax harvest, because you get more production, you get more income, you get more taxes. And I thought it was interesting that he chose 39% as the benchmark where this punitive level starts, given that the Albanese government is bringing back a 37-cent tax rate. Now, Paul Keating was talking about the top rate, which, as we know, is nearly 50 cents in the dollar. But that 37-cent tax rate, which is coming back, which the previous government under Stage 3 was removing, that means that a lot of Australians progressively over the years are going to go into that level of paying tax. And it comes back to your point about tax indexation. They'll do so because the brackets won't be indexed. So we get inflation going up, we get wages going up, we get that tax hike going up.
Yeah. Look, it's also interesting that he would make that criticism because Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, is Paul Keating's protege. So it's not direct criticism, of course, but it is because they've just changed the Stage 3 reforms that would have lowered the top tax rate.
Well, it's more that 37 cent, which was going to be abolished and come down to 30 cents. And yes, there would have been a pushing up of there would have been a form of tax indexation by pushing up the brackets. It is interesting, but I think that Paul Keating cherishes what he did with the tax system back in the 80s, and he would not be happy with the way things have gone subsequently. I mean, he gave us the reformed tax system, he gave us the reformed industrial relations system, which led to better outcomes for workers and better outcomes for businesses. And I don't think he'd be happy seeing those sorts of reforms being rolled back across the board by the current government, with Tony Burke going off on his own wild frolic in the IR space, and this happening with the tax system.
Yeah, I know that the IR reform is so radical, and it shows that the PM doesn't have control over his ministers, or there's no overarching narrative because they each have autonomy to pursue their own pet projects. And for Tony Burke, it's getting the unions back on side. Terry, the government claimed that they did have positive economic news today. For the first time in 3 years, wages growth outstripped inflation, but only just. So inflation for the year was 4.1%. Wages increased by 4.2%. Look, there's no percentage point here that's too small for the government to celebrate. But Terry, seriously, to what degree can Labor claim responsibility for this wages growth, and is anyone actually even feeling it anyway?
Sherry, you have to think that the champagne corks are popping all around Australia, particularly in the working class suburbs. I mean,
yes,
it is absurd for the government to really grab at this. Don't mention 2022, when we had inflation of 8.5% and we had wage increases of less than 4%. So no, it is absurd. And in a sense, it would be very silly for the government to claim credit for this, because those wages rising at more than 4% is precisely the biggest threat for homeowners to see their interest rates stay at the very high levels or indeed go up. Michelle Bullock, the Reserve Bank governor, has made it absolutely crystal clear that 4% wage increases and higher is incompatible with getting inflation down unless we have dramatic improvements in productivity. And we've got a government which is so focused on destroying productivity in IR, in energy, all the other parts of the economy. So I really don't think Jim Chalmers would be wise to claim this as some sort of great outcome, because it may be well the case that we'll see higher interest rates as a consequence.
We will see. I mean, everyone's predicting something different when it comes to rate cuts this year. Terry McCrann, always wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much.